Jennifer from Cultaholic.com and welcome to Seeing the Best In. Yes, it's me, the advocate of optimism, and thank you so much for joining me once again as we take a look at things professional wrestling fans around the world are not very fond of, but we try and see that they're not as bad as you may think. This time, we are seeing the best in WWE ECW. Think back to the heydays of 2006. The John Cena era was in full swing. TNA were operating at their best and London Bridge by Fergie was riding high in the charts. We also saw the second ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, an event that, while not as good as the 2005 edition, further proved that fan appetite for ECW had not dimmed since closing its doors in 2001. Vince McMahon, smelling money in the air, decided to bring back ECW as a weekly TV show, and our prayers were answered for about 5 minutes. A shadow of its former self, ECW on Sci-Fi was firmly billed as the C-show of WWE TV, featuring matchups no one cared about, starring D-list WWE talent that no one cared about, with none of the aggression, attitude or boundary pushing of Paul Heyman's finest achievement. But was it all that bad? If it wasn't called ECW, we would probably view it in a fonder light. The name was ultimately setting the brand up to fail, given how passionate ECW fans are, even to this day. Doubly so, seeing as ECW was rebooted as the WWE PG era was coming over the horizon. Regardless, WWE ECW gave talent who wouldn't get a sniff of the time on Raw and SmackDown a chance to hone their craft and develop their characters, and acted as a springboard for many wrestlers who would go on to achieve great success in WWE and beyond. It definitely had its bad, but it had more than its fair share of good. So join me as we see the best in WWE ECW. Number 1, ECW. Especially during those early episodes, there was a feeling of optimism about ECW. Fans were clamouring for an alternative to Raw and SmackDown, while some lapsed fans will have tuned in to see RVD, Dreamer and the like doing the kind of wrestling that made them famous. Paul Heyman was behind the wheel of a major brand for the first time since the SmackDown 6 era, and the goodwill from both One Night Stands and the Rise and Fall DVD, coupled with genuine fervour from diehards, meant that excitement was at an all-time high. It was genuinely exciting. ECW was presented differently on screen from the red and the blue brands, with the hard camera positioned differently to Raw and SmackDown, and the stage setup feeling more low-key and intimate with that weird kink in the entrance towards the ring. This was all until WWE decided that all shows needed to look the same and share a generic Titantron, and was one of the many things that stripped WWE ECW of what little identity it had. They also ran ECW shows and tapings in arenas that modern WWE would not touch with a barge pole, with house shows in the fabled ECW arena in Philadelphia and TV tapings at the Hammerstein Ballroom, another classic ECW stomping ground. It felt and looked different, but Vince McMahon was still the boss and had final say on everything, including shoehorning his ethos and stars into ECW to prove that WWE was the be-all and end-all, and everyone who thought otherwise was an imbecile. If you've never seen it, have a look at the Big Show versus Batista at the Hammerstein after this video. You'll see what I mean. Regardless, there was still enough of a roster to pique people's interest. You had the prime originals in Van Damme, Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Sabu, ECW alumni Just Incredible, Balls Mahoney and the FBI, alongside main event machines like Kurt Angle and eventually Chris Benoit to give credibility to the show. You also had established main event talent like the Big Show drafted over, who might not be one to set the world on fire, but is a good get with bucket loads of gravitas and experience for any roster. But the wheels soon fell off as dual ECW and WWE champion Rob Van Dam was arrested for driving, let's say, under the influence and subsequently stripped of his titles. This, coupled with the Sci-Fi Network nonsense of the Zombie and friends, yes, we all remember them, pretty much killed ECW before it began. It's just such a shame that WWE, and to an extent the talents themselves, didn't have faith enough in ECW. Imagine a sustained run with someone like Kurt Angle as ECW champion, putting on clinics week in, week out with, say, Shelton Benjamin, CM Punk, John Morrison and the like, giving the diehards the kind of content they so badly desired. ECW needed to break out and stand apart to be successful, but it neither had the opportunity nor the actual drive to do so. But at least ECW had Paul Heyman pulling the strings, attempting to merge the ECW of old with the stars he was given by the WWE top brass, while understanding that he could develop the next breed of superstars in a way that only Paul E could. Until he was fired after December to Dismember after Vince stuck his nose in too much and had it thrown back in his face by the fans, and Heyman had to fall on his sword as a result. Number 2, the straight edge saviour. ECW's greatest success was the signing of indie darling and internet curmudgeon CM Punk from Ring of Honor. Fresh off his fabled first summer of Punk in Ring of Honor, CM Punk was white hot and brought a great deal of expectation and anticipation with him when he made his ECW debut. It's arguable that if he would have went straight to Raw or SmackDown, he would have gotten lost in the shuffle fairly quickly, but ECW allowed him to flourish as a big fish in a small pond, whilst further adapting to the WWE style after a short stint in OVW. His TV debut was handled superbly too, in front of a rabid classic ECW crowd in New York's Hammerstein Ballroom against ECW original Just Incredible after weeks of vignettes hyping his arrival. Punk was given a hero's welcome, and even casual fans were being wowed by this martial arts kick-throwing scruffy kid from Chicago. He was soon thrust to the top of the ECW card and was Paul Heyman's pick to instantly eliminate ECW champ Big Show during the December to Dismember Elimination Chamber, until Vince had his say. This didn't halt his momentum though, and Punk was soon scrapping for the ECW title with John Morrison, the styles of the two wrestlers unlike anything on the main card title scenes at the time. Imagine if this was an NXT title feud, and the internet would be going absolutely ballistic for it. ECW soon became the CM Punk show and continued to build buzz around the straight edge superstar, leading to an extremely fruitful run on main roster television. It's worth noting that originally Punk was scheduled to face Chris Benoit for the ECW Championship in a title tournament final at Vengeance before the tragic incident occurred. Looking at it from a strictly objective point of view, a title programme between Punk and Benoit would have been one for the ages, and fans were left wondering, what if? Regardless, Punk and ECW needed each other, and while it lasted, it was a very good fit indeed. Number 3, the precursor to NXT. Without the ECW experiment, would we have NXT? It's impossible to say, but what's for sure is that ECW can be seen as a trial run for a distinct third brand. As when the plug was finally pulled on ECW after nearly 4 years, Vince filled the time slot on Sci-Fi Channel with the original NXT, full of barrel-carrying glory and other assorted game show ideas. The evidence is there: a 1-hour-long weekly programme, a roster of greenhorns, underdeveloped characters and indie darlings, and a look and feel that, while still distinctly WWE, felt worlds away from Raw and SmackDown. It's also worth taking a look at the competition of the time. ECW was established to tap into lapsed fans who had flocked to Ring of Honor and TNA, while NXT competes, for lack of a better word, against AEW and New Japan. Brothers from other mothers, sisters from other misters. Like NXT, ECW allowed many developmental acts to flourish and grow as performers. Trent Beretta started life dude-busting in ECW, and now's a fan favourite in AEW. There were even ECW runs for Gavin, Sean, Ty Dillinger Spears, Evan Bourne and Wildcat Chris Harris, although the less said about the former Braden Walker, the better. Most notably, ECW launched the careers of several WWE main eventers and champions. Sheamus was in ECW for a cup of tea before beating John Cena for the WWE title. Jack Swagger had a run as ECW champion before his World Heavyweight title run, and Kofi Kingston made his WWE debut on ECW. And Bobby Lashley was famously ECW champion. The Miz and John Morrison especially were weekly highlights on ECW, whether scrapping it out for the ECW title with Punk or joining forces as the criminally underrated Miz and Morrison tag team. Their dirt sheet show on WWE.com, absolute gold. Yes, the Lashley experiment was a bit of a disaster for all involved, as Vince took one look at Big Bob, saw he had muscles upon muscles, and gave him the Roman Reigns push when the big dog was still a little pup. Fans turned on it, and it took Lashley leaving, knocking a few fellas out on the MMA scene, and his amazing work in TNA to finally erase the stench of his ECW push. Number 4, it allowed the lower mid-card to flourish. ECW wasn't just a place for newer talents to thrive, it gave airtime and a much needed kick up the arse to the careers of a lot of old hands. Hardcore Holly had a particularly notable tenure in ECW, mixing his established Fed persona with his real life character of a stiff, miserable sod to become a decent upper mid-card heel. Holly's match with RVD on ECW TV is of particular note, with the former Sparky Plug receiving a nasty gash to his lower back after delivering an apron suplex to Van Dam through a table at ringside. Be warned though, these early ECW shows with Holly still bore more of a resemblance to actual ECW than later shows did. Alongside Hardcore Bob, Test had a so-and-so run as a big angry enforcer to heel GM Paul Heyman, which could have been a bigger deal had both of them stuck around. Chavo Guerrero was ECW champ for a bit, and although booked terribly, Matt Hardy was a good popular face to lead the brand when he did. And let's not forget when Christian returned from TNA to save ECW. Thanks for the amazing commentary on that one, Todd Grisham. In hindsight, one of ECW's greatest successes was Mark Henry. The former sexual chocolate had been languishing at the lower end of the mid-card for the best part of a decade and had done little of note since the Nation of Domination folded, before a newfound mean streak on SmackDown transformed him from a gentle giant into a feral monster. Being drafted over to ECW further allowed Henry to operate, as he always should have, as an absolute man-mountain that no one should want to step in the ring with. He was the PG era's answer to Vader, but without the concussion blows and moonsaults. Big Mark's ECW title win was his first title since he was awarded the European Championship in 1999, and although his run with ECW's top prize may not have set the world on fire, it gave him a ton of credibility and set the wheels in motion for the now legendary Hall of Pain. And number 5, a Cena-free zone. Even the most ardent John Cena haters have mellowed up on the leader of the C Nation by now. He is one of the greatest stars of all time and has been involved in some incredible matches in his career. 2006 John Cena, however, was not the same man as the one we know and love today. A popular figure in SmackDown's mid-card, Cena's Doctor of Thugonomics persona got him over like Rover with the fans, leading to a US title run and eventually a WWE title win when he bested JBL at Mania 21. However, the honeymoon period of WWE champion John Cena soon wore off, and Big Match John soon became public enemy number 1 with half of the WWE audience. Discontent with Cena was bubbling along, with the smatterings of boos growing week in, week out whenever he came to the ring. This built to a crescendo during his WWE Championship match with Rob Van Dam at One Night Stand 2, with the ECW faithful giving Cena a now legendary hostile reception. Fans had never been this divided over a superstar, and those that disliked Cena absolutely hated him. The vitriol stemmed from a number of factors. There was the fact that he was seen as the chosen champion without earning it, a frankly quite preposterous notion in predetermined sport. After all, what was Hogan? What was Macho Man? It also didn't help that Cena was far from the polished in-ring performer that we know today, as around this time his matches usually hinged on the performance of his opponent, with Cena being in programmes with ring magicians such as Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, as well as the growing feud with rival Edge. Most importantly, this was the time of Super Cena, and it just wound people up the wrong way. Time after time, Cena overcame the odds in ways that were a little hard to swallow, and this was all before he literally was hit by a car and brushed it off. Ludicrous. For the anti-Cena crowd, there was ECW, a space that was clearly a Cena-free zone. Well, after the first episode anyway, and fans were receptive to it. If you wanted Cena, then fine, you knew where to find him. But it was not to be on ECW. This was a wrestling show, not a sports entertainment show. These were wrestlers and not superstars. Well, actually, they were called extremists, which is a terrible name, but you get my drift. This was as far away from John Cena as a modern WWE audience could get. And for some, that was all that mattered.